Hello, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I am Felicia Martin, the Vice President of the NCAA Eligibility Center, and also Interim Senior Vice President of Inclusion, Education, and Community Engagement. Throughout my career, I've made decisions that are student-athlete centric. I've always been a believer in the power of education, the importance of integrity, and opening the doors of opportunity when it comes to professional endeavors. Leaders must educate themselves through programs, strategic relationships, and career experiences. As a woman of color, I've found that the right exposure and strategic networking can be instrumental in progressing to executive-level leadership positions. We've created the NCAA Leadership Collective to provide exposure for our industry's most talented minority administrators and coaches. The NCAA Leadership Collective is a database that houses career profiles of ethnic minorities who are ready to step into major leadership roles. Qualified athletic administrators and coaches can create their professional profile in the collective and keep it up to date as they progress throughout their careers. Presidents, chancellors, conference commissioners, and athletic directors have access to each profile in the collective, so they can build a comprehensive list of candidates for opportunities within their respective organizations. I encourage people to visit ncaa.org/leadership-development to get more details on the NCAA Leadership Collective. This is an incredible resource for our industry. Be well.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at OneQ Leadership. Our guest today is Haven Fields. Haven is the Deputy Athletics Director at Ball State University. Greetings, Haven. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you've been in that role for 2.5 years. Throughout your career, you spent time at Illinois, South Alabama, and Auburn, primarily working in development with almost 20 years in the industry. So, I mean, we can say you're a veteran to college athletics, right? I mean, is it safe to say that?
Yeah, we could. Sometimes I feel like even in that 20 years, it's still been a very interesting transition in each role where you start escalating up the industry as far as what you're doing. And seems like at times, everywhere I've been, my network and the people that I've had the chance to get to know has grown. It's been very humbling. So I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Which is an excellent thing. So you finished playing ball, and I think you got into compliance or something like that right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
And then there was something somebody saw in you when they said, hey, we think you might be good in development, right? This was almost 18, 20 years ago. And whatever they saw in you, right, over this time, you have built on whatever that something is in development. And whatever that something is that you built on may be the thing that gets you to an athletics director role in the future, whenever that is, right? If that's something you're looking for. Now, when you talk in terms of self-evaluation, what do you believe that thing they saw in you is, and how, as it has evolved over the years, how has it helped you when making executive decisions and also in leadership roles when you're leading people around you?
I think when you've been blessed and God gives you gifts, it's very important to use them. The thing that's been really good in my career, you go back, you talk about the compliance piece. And I think the thing that I want to share is even prior to that, taking on that role, it was a very short time as being a graduate assistant. But the two things that I had to do every morning before I even sat down in the compliance office was deliver mail and make the coffee. I'll reference that I did that for like 8 months during part of that graduate assistantship. On top of the fact that I was working in compliance and event management. But I think it's tied to people. I've been very fortunate and blessed and humble that I'm able to connect with people, different personalities, and that come from different backgrounds. I think it's the thing that's been able to carry me, how I connect with people and how I build relationships in the industry and out of it. That's allowed me to be able to do some of the things to work with organizations, and we have some success.
Right. You talk about connecting with people. We were on the Athletic Director U video. I think it was you and Josh Brooks, both in the deputy role. Of course, Josh has become the athletics director down in Georgia. And one of the things you talked about was like I think you termed it turning over the rocks, the stones to find the people to re-engage back to Ball State, right? And you talk about people.
Right.
And if you could do it back as a graduate assistant, I imagine that people skills, right? Understanding and talking and connecting with people probably is like 1,000 times sharper now. And when you talk about sharpening a strength, how do you sharpen the strength of understanding and connecting with people, right? You've been doing it for 18 to 20 years. Like, how do you make that better in terms of your role?
You really focused on depth, and how you approach people, how you have the type of conversations you have, and those can evolve over time. I think in building any relationship, it's very important to listen, which is something I continue to focus on because you know so much about people. I think in the development world, people share so many different things about themselves, and it's a really good opportunity for us to gain understanding of what they're passionate about, what they have an affinity for, the things that they want to truly impact. And in those moments, when you're able to comprehend all of that and be able to share things with them about the experience you want to be able to provide and ways to be able to go back to them about certain things they share with you, I think the magic happens. So it's very important for me is to just, continue to sharpen my tools by listening to people, connecting with them, and having some depth in conversations where a lot of times early on is surface level. But as you get to know people, conversations get deeper. You start learning more personal things about them because they share them because they trust you. And so I think that that's the thing I point to the most, whether it's been with a colleague, a prospective donor, an alum, people just understanding that I'm willing to have very, honest conversations with depth for us to be able to grow the relationship and be able to make sure that we're all successful. Them being able to assist, the institution in ways they see fit, financially, time, talent, and treasure, as we say, or to just be able to build a genuine friendship. I always love to tell a story. Now, I haven't worked at Auburn in 15, 16 years, but there are still people that I connect with, send Christmas cards to, and vice versa. Those are true friendships that have lasted a lifetime.
So thinking about connections with people, and these are connections with people who have an affinity for the current institution, where for you it's Ball State. I wonder about internally, right? In the role you are in, you're external facing, right? You're working with donors. But there's also a leadership role in terms of the people you work with and for around you. Tell me about how that skill applies when you're leading the people that actually work for Ball State and people who you're communicating with the campus enhancement office or, those types of things.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And aside from the external role, a lot of my work is tied to external, but I'm doing a lot more internally. I work with our sports performance teams.
That's what I was going to ask. The development role, the deputy role, what does that entail in terms of?
I think it's a great question because I'm in and out all the time. I'm outward facing and then I'm inward facing. So it's a balance. I think there are two things in my mind, and I heard Kevin White say this. There's two things that cannot be delegated, and those are politics and leadership. And obviously the politics. We need people having to manage the forces of things happening on campus that could be complex. But then from a leadership perspective, someone has to be the spokesperson. It's obviously our director of athletics, the woman that I'm in the trenches with every day, and Beth Getz, but also being what I always say is her general to the captain, being able to keep things off of her desk and being able to make sure that I'm also enhancing what those relationships look like when you're outward facing and you're dealing with campus partners. And again, building those relationships are key because we have opportunities now to collaborate on a lot of projects and programs internally within our own department. With athletics, within any organization, people are the most important thing. How you manage them, how you handle them is important. I don't want to ever walk in a room because I'm having to deliver something to people because I'm the guy in charge. I want to make sure that we have a relationship, and so people don't always assume it's something that work related. It may just be me walking in the room and asking them how things are going. Walking in the office, I don't want to always have to sit down and it's work related. And I think that in building those relationships with people, when you do that, the difficult conversations become a lot easier because they know you as a leader. They understand expectations, even if there is a sense of the fact that you're genuine and you want to get to know them and understand them and their families. We all have jobs to do. We all be held accountable for them. So I think that at the top of it is really important in how I manage people. No different, that's why we're in this industry. It's built on people, and how we handle them, I think, ultimately will provide success in the overall organization.
Yeah, that's true. You mentioned Beth Getz, athletic director. You've been in the role for 2.5 years, and one of the things that if you're the number two, right, you want to see around corners. Anticipation is very important. I wonder, as your role has expanded, as you have evolved in this role, what are the things that you do well that have helped Beth do her job better since she's brought you on?
And I love to say the beautiful thing about this opportunity that was provided to me, and I'm truly grateful to Beth and President Mearns for the opportunity, is that I did not know her to start this deal. We work together before, and it's blossomed into a great working relationship and personal relationship. There are things that it's always important, in my opinion. The number one role of any deputy athletic director, to your point, is how do you keep things off of her desk? How do you keep items off her plate? I think is so important. And so the thing that I continue to focus on is taking those really difficult tasks and plans that have been created and making sure that I'm not bringing her problems, I'm bringing her solutions, recommendations of ways to be able to move our department forward. You said it best, being able to share information before it gets to her desk that she needs to know about, and things that are not as of much concern, me to be able to make decisions and support my decisions on why I made them and for us to move on. Because she does not have all the time in the world to be able to do everything that comes across her desk. So I think early on, while that was something that I was still trying to feel out, because you're trying to get to know someone on a daily basis, I've been able to get more of a grasp. Even through COVID, we were working from home for 4 or 5 months in the midst of how we would manage our staff, how we're meeting with them, virtually. But then now that we're back, really having a sense of what I need to keep off her desk versus the things that she needs to be looped into, I think has been somewhat of an evolution in how I would handle this process and working with her to make sure that she's not having to worry about things blowing up in her face. So I would say that that's probably been the most important for me right now, for our department, because of the nature of what we've seen the last 20 months or so with COVID.
Right, the ability to see around corners. Right. We talked about being a people person and how that has evolved over the past 20 years in terms of a skill that you have, not just professionally, but personally. But also, you talk about being in this leadership role for 2.5 years. Have you discovered any other strengths that have helped you do your job at a high level?
There are a couple of things that I'm really thinking about as we had this conversation. I think COVID challenged us all. It's extremely important that I take time to get to know staff professionally and personally. Like I said, create an environment. I mentioned that because I think that was important during a time where people really needed to know that their supervisors are here to listen. But I think 2 other things that were really important during this time frame is understand, like, the level of emotional intelligence for me has been heightened in the way we deal with people. The self-awareness, the self-management, social awareness, relationship management, all those things I think overall have been important for me in how I deal with our people as far as managing them in the day-to-day of college athletics. And then I think really perfecting the art of a difficult conversation, because there's more of them that have had to be had over the last 18, 20 months on my side of it, in particular internally, to be able to have some difficult conversations with people that in some cases are not performing up to their part, or not performing to the level of expectation. So those are a couple of things I would point to right away, just because so many of them have come up over the last 2 years or so.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Emotional intelligence and difficult conversations, right? So you're
right.
Whether they're being brought to you or you're bringing them to someone else.
Exactly. Exactly.
You have to gauge, how is my temperament
Exactly.
in this conversation right now? Because this person is reacting in a way that this is probably not the best news they're hearing or something like that. I
Correct.
mean, that's
On a more, I think early on in a more regular basis, and then realizing that once you have a conversation with people, I don't want to consider myself a therapist or a counselor because but when you sit down and when you have a conversation about whatever situation or whatever's going on at that time, I think it's really important to be able to lay it all out on the table. And sometimes we realize these are not as difficult as they seem. I just don't, it takes a couple of people to be able to have a conversation and realize, like, as we talk through it, we discuss all the things that are positive, the things that are negative, that we come to a solution together. And I think that's also an important piece, allowing people to realize that they can make some decisions as well. And you're just helping guide the conversation along about what you would do or what you wouldn't do. They catch thoughts in that moment as if, oh, I didn't think about that. And then all of a sudden, it manifests itself in a way for them to be able to understand what's next and where they need to be going in that moment.
That's the skill in itself, right? The skill of taking a difficult conversation and then turning it to an empowering conversation.
Exactly.
Because you know that these are the decisions you can make. We just got to make sure we know how to get to the decision.
And I think people appreciate those because
right.
in that, as you guys are having those difficult conversations and you come to a solution. Now, it wasn't me making the decision. It was us coming to a solution together about not what's best for them, not what's best for me, but what's best for this department, what's best for Ball State University and our athletics department.
Which is important. I'll ask you a couple questions here and then we'll wrap. Thinking about being over external. Now, you did say as a deputy, you do have roles that are tied to internal. And of course, the student athlete experience is one of the top priorities for those who work in college athletics. But the nature of external role sometimes can prevent the student athlete engagement that most people would prefer when you work in college athletics. I wonder about that dilemma for you during your time there at Ball State.
So the great thing is because of the way that our department is structured, I see our kids all the time. And being a sport administrator, working with football, working with field hockey, working with gymnastics, seeing our basketball teams around, going to practices are really important for me. Having interactions when you see them out because you recognize them. I don't know every name, really have focused on the sports that I work closely with, but you see things on social media. It's important for me to make comment if I see a birthday. I want to know that I know it. I've taken time where I've wrote handwritten notes and I've asked coaches to put it in their locker just to let them know I saw something and I'm excited for them. I think those things go a long way because now all of a sudden they're coming to your office to say hello. And then I've also really taken the time. It's easy that you think a sport administrator is always going to travel with a football or basketball. I've gotten on buses with field hockey and gymnastics to go to competition and spend time with those young women because I think it is really important for them to know that administration is supportive of their experience, not just competitively, not just academically, but personal career development. All that, the holistic approach of how we're trying to develop these young people for the future. So all those things are ways that I've been able to really spend time and engage them, and I think it's helpful. Going to student athlete advisory committee meetings, spending time with the leaders of the group. And so those are things that have really helped me be able to develop relationships with our student athletes.
Yeah, which is excellent. This is a hypothetical question. You'll have to walk with me on this one. Let's say 25 years from now, right? You're retiring from either being a director of athletics, a commissioner, CEO, some type of leadership role, leading a major department, right? A lot of money going through, a lot of people working for you. Influence and responsibility are number one. What would you say your leadership philosophy would have been over that time, right? I mean, obviously you're developing it, you're learning from other people around you, you have a philosophy now, but if you were to look forward and try to, hypothetically guess how you led and what would your leadership philosophy be if you were retiring 25 some years from now?
That is a fan question, a loaded one, but I think it's a great question for us to be able to talk through. The thing that I would say, Ty, is that I impacted their experience by not always, and we spoke a little bit about this earlier, by being of service, not always feeling like I had to be the guy in the room making the decision, but allowing people to be involved in the decision making and the process, and also held them accountable for the jobs that they had been given. And again, I think the most important piece to that is while we all love this experience and most of us are passionate about college athletics, our job is to impact the overall, that being the institution, the athletic department, the student athletes, and even in some cases, how we interact with the students on campus. And I want people to realize that in my time as an athletics administrator, the goal was always to leave a place better than you found it. And the way to do that is, again, by doing the job at a very high level, by involving others to help to allow them to also make leadership decisions that are going to impact the program at a very high level, but for us to be able to have sustained success. But the most important piece of that is just that I'm of service to all those that I've come in contact with. And I hope that they also take that same philosophy and understand that I can lead in every realm, but I've got to be of service in some components while I do that.
Right. Yeah, that's excellent. And I'm sure that the people around you that you work with and for now see you doing those things right now at Ball State. Haven, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. Really appreciate the time.
That was Haven Fields. Haven is the Deputy Athletics Director at Ball State University. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.